from the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria, but also political analyst Professor Lesiba Teffo is going to be joining us for that conversation. Prof, thanks for joining us. There's a lot to get through. There's so much more that we haven't even covered. We need to let the good doctor go as well, because she will also be back in quite a few, in just a few hours. So on the issue of the Western Cape, I mean, we've obviously got news just coming in. Perhaps you could take us through what's emerging and the implications for it in the race in the Western Cape at least.
Yeah, so there's news that's come from the Western Cape from the manager, the IEC's provincial regional manager in the Western Cape, that they are going to stop data entry for the night.
Yeah.
They have completed 51.08% of voting districts there, and basically he said that his team's been working they've been up and working for 72 hours, and he is concerned that there may be some errors in the data capture. Sure. And so that they're going to stop working for the night, go get some sleep, and they will start again at 6 a.m. And as we were talking earlier, the Western Cape has, they've done quite well. They've completed over half of the results, and unlike the Northern Cape, which is a tiny population, an important population, of course, in a very big province, but it's a small population. The Western Cape, the city of Cape Town, for example, we'd heard earlier from the IEC in the briefing that they gave a bit earlier on tonight, that the 8 metro municipalities haven't been completed, and those 8 metro municipalities have the bulk of voters. 55% of voters in South Africa are from the 8 metros, and so a lot of the lag in the results coming in is because those votes aren't completed. And I imagine there's a similar thing happening in the Western Cape. The city of Cape Town results are just taking a really long time. I've got a friend who was observing a few of the voting stations in the city of Cape Town, and she said that she got to bed at like 4 a.m. this morning, and so they will continue with all the counting is done, but remember, this is the process now of the data capture, and then making sure that that's accurate, and then they're going to be audited and all of those things before they get onto the board. And so he said that they will start again at 6 a.m. And so that's with the Western Cape. I do think that the data capture and all of that is continuing in some of the other provinces, and so we may have some results that trickle in over the night, but as I said, I think that we will be where we thought we would be on Thursday night is where we will probably be on Friday night.
Yes, you did say that. And as that data continues, that capturing continues behind us, we were looking at some of the top 8 contenders. And Prof, let me bring you to the conversation, because offline we were speaking about the role of independent candidates this time round. And really, what's been reflected perhaps on the percentage that's been tallied at this point, 39.99% nationally.
Look, the story of the independent candidate was bound to be frustrating and to warrant further interrogation, because I can't see how one can make it given the nature or the type of electoral act that we have. I mean, it's like a sardine trying to swim against the seagulls and the sharks. And there's no prospect of survival there. You can't even attempt to put up a fight. And that speaks to the need to urgently change in a profound way the Electoral Act. I heard Dr. Ahmad say he spent about 11 million rand, and there was somebody generous enough to give him 5 or 7 million rand out of her own pocket. She mentioned the name. I think the person was not even keen that the name should be made public, but he was keen to do that. Now, look, an independent spending is 11 million rand canvassing, and he's the only one who does seem to have a prospect of getting there. But the rest, I mean, they don't even have that half of the money that Ahmad had. The t-shirts, what do you call this? The posters don't come cheap. So and who's funding them, by the way, and to which end? Who's funding the proliferation of these parties? With which motive? Ulterior, if you please.
So, Prof, are you questioning whether this was progressive, or was this naivety on their part? If you're still looking at the offerings, the fragmentation amongst them? How similar or dissimilar were they? Where do you think, what were the hits and misses from your vantage point?
Look, sometimes we overestimate ourselves. They are not the first. We have got a number of people who tried to form political parties that fell by the wayside.
Sure.
Simply because people had inflated egos or wrong ideas were planted in them. And I suspect most of these young new parties, in the main, greed, the law of office. I know I may be overstating it, but the salary and the pegs that South African politicians get are far surpass the salaries people in advanced democracies have. I look at the pegs they get, the bodyguards and the cars they go about vis-a-vis their counterparts in Europe, who are far advanced in terms of resources. Somewhere there we must begin to discuss and to talk. Everybody wants to form a party precisely because that is more paying than corporate, than firms, than industry. You cannot, madam, in a country as small as us, you have 400 political parties and have 53 presidential candidates. Something's not right.
Looking at the new entrants as well then, and the inroads that they've also made, shining a spotlight on MK and how they've changed the political landscape. Politics 101 coming to the fore. I mean, what are you observing? Dr. Mbete, you can also jump in after
Look, I know when the EFF came on board, it was not given a chance. The assumption was it will go the route of COPE. And it has survived, and then it became a big party. So let me not be too harsh. We may also be surprised in as much. I know the EFF was not given much chance, but it surprised many. And then I'm among the first, if not the first, to say, don't underestimate this old man from Kandla. If you do that, you are doing it at your own peril. Suddenly, the rest is history. So maybe I might be forced to eat a humble pie that the so-called Smolanyana party tomorrow emerge as major players. But for now, yes, I can only see tears on the floor. And some had begun to pack and leave for home even before we could reach 50% of the vote, because the writing is evidently on the wall. And if I can go biblical. Somebody upon a time when I was at primary school said, many tackle ufarsen.
Your thoughts of the party 6 months in since its formation and you know what it's managed to do at this point?
So Prof is speaking about eating humble pie. This morning on Morning Live, I said that I am fully prepared to eat my hat because I had not given MK I hadn't given the consideration that they would do as well as they very clearly are doing. And I think that they've really proven us wrong. I do think that there is something to consider though around that of the four biggest parties that, you know, in whichever way, I think the ANC and the DA, I think, are going to pretty much level out at where they currently are. The ANC at 43%, the DA at 24%, maybe 2% either way. And then the EFF and the MK, you know, we don't know who's going to end up at 3 or who's going to end up at 4, but, you know, they'll be in. So those four parties are going to be the top four parties in the National Assembly. And when you look at three of those four parties, the ANC, the MK, the EFF, are derivatives of each other. I mean, the EFF and the MK are breakaway parties from the ANC. And I think when you have an election that was so defined by calls for change, and a lot of people saying, no, we're tired, we want change, a lot of that change has come out of manifestations of the ANC. And I think it creates, there's room for thinking and for real reflection by some of us who are, political analysts and journalists and everyone, but then also for the general, for the broader public about what is it actually that we need when we say that we want change, because there clearly is something around the political culture, values, messaging that has come and even policy stances to some degree that have come out of the ANC that still resonate with people.
Yes.
And what people are resisting is how that is manifested, who the particular leaders are that are doing that. But that we've got our whole, about 60% of our politics, 65% of our politics that is still rotating around the ANC, and two breakaways from the ANC, I think says something about our politics and our political culture, and I think it's something that we're going to need to be thinking about for months and years after this election.
And so, Prof, on the back of what the good doctors echoed, I mean, we're looking at the MK not having the necessary structures leading up to the last minute. What would have influenced voters going in? Was this a protest vote? A change coming out of the ANC, as Dr. Mbete alluded to. But what does this also mean ultimately going forward? Identity politics. How would you weigh in on those points as well?
I said then, and I can repeat myself, the fact that they could start a party and gain traction without a structure and a glossy paper called a manifesto.
Yes.
It invites academic students and researchers to engage the subject. And I can speak for myself and say they didn't need that, because the manifesto is the pothole that dysfunctional hospital, the absence of the rail lines. Do I have to write it or reduce it to paper to tell the people about that? We have had many of those things, and you cannot have about 53 manifestos that would have a difference. But she said something about that I want to latch onto, namely, when we said we see the possibility of the ruling party going down, not reaching 50%, some people got some emotional trauma because they could not cope or put up with that. But now we can, with a bit of confidence, say it does look like it is going to happen with the CSIR model. Yes. Right? The CSIR model never failed us in the past 4 or 5 elections. But that said, women beings are special creatures, and the self-preservation is what defines most of us. It was former President Motlanthe who said, the ANC, if it were to lose elections, and I said I align myself with him, and even today I am saying so, it sends a good chance to redeem and to renew itself, because it has been infiltrated and infested by careerists and opportunists, thugs and compradors who are self-serving. Let them lose the elections, renew and redeem and cleanse itself. A stronger ANC will emerge, and it will serve people better. And I think similar sentiments are expressed by former President Mbeki. But okay, they are politicians, one way or another. They have the potential also to somersault.
It's clear that there are more questions than answers at this point, and the data is slowly trickling in. I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us at the SABC. I know the coverage continues in just a few hours, but Dr. Sithembile Mbete joining us there, and of course, as I mentioned, she'll be back in the morning to break down some more of those numbers as they trickle in. I'm still with Prof. Lesiba Teffo, so